Within popular culture, enslaved people are often depicted as robust, vigorous, and strong. Yet enslaved people often suffered brutal injuries at the hands of their enslavers. What was life like for those enslaved persons who suffered devastating injuries, and how did they deal with disability? Join us today for a discussion with the research fellow, who is teasing out how masculinity, physicality, and disability shape the worldview of both the enslaver and the enslaved, as we explore the pages of Kentucky history with Kentucky Chronicles. Hi, I'm Daniel J. Burge, the Associate Editor of the Register of the Kentucky Historical Society, a scholarly journal in publication since 1903. I also coordinate our Research Fellows program, which supports researcher visits to our campus from around the world. I would like to welcome you all to Season 2 of Kentucky Chronicles. In our first season, we talked with 12 guests, exploring topics ranging from the New Madrid earthquakes of 1810-11 to how a killing influenced a community in Caldwell County. In each episode, we have tried to introduce you all to scholars who are working on topics dealing with Kentucky's rich history, whether these were young scholars at work on their dissertations or slightly more seasoned researchers who had completed a monograph. Each guest helped explore one aspect of Kentucky history. I would like to thank each and every listener for joining me each month. I know I learned a lot in Season 1, including how to pronounce New Madrid. We have a great list of topics planned out for Season 2, so if you are interested in the history of convict leasing, the international influence of 4-H, or how the Civil War remade Kentucky's borders, be sure to stay tuned. If you have enjoyed the podcast, drop us a line, and be sure to give us a review. We would love to hear what topics you are interested in hearing, and we thank you for joining us each month as we explore the pages of Kentucky's history with Kentucky Chronicles. Mia Edwards earned an MA in Atlantic History and Politics at the University of Missouri, Columbia. She is currently working on her PhD at the University of Warwick. She has won several research grants and the Bryan Marsden History Prize from the University of Sheffield. She is currently working on her dissertation, which is entitled Masculinity, Physicality, and Disability: Shifting Experiences and Ideologies Within the Antebellum South, 1800 to 1861. Well, welcome to the podcast, Mia.
Thank you.
So for this podcast, we have talked to folks who have visited Kentucky from a variety of places, but you have traveled pretty far. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do currently?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Manchester in England, which if you don't know, that's in the north of England. And I'm studying for my PhD at the University of Warwick, which is more in the Midlands in England. So I'm very excited to be here, but I definitely have traveled quite a long way. It's true.
One of the things I always like to ask, and this is, I think I ask of all our fellows who are international, sort of the distance that they've traveled, but what is it that got you interested in Kentucky? So sort of tell us a little bit about your topic, but also how did you get here? Like, how did you actually show up and decide to do this particular topic?
Yeah, well, I guess more generally beyond my topic, kind of bluegrass music and the South is sort of a young person always really interested me. And then the idea of Kentucky and horses and everything has been very intertwined in my mind for a long time. So I always just thought it was quite an interesting place and very, very different to where I grew up, which is sort of very industrial and things, in its makeup. But in terms of the topic, I would say that as I started to do my research and things, the Kentucky sort of seemed like an interesting state that was a bit of a border. Maybe was kind of a little bit different compared to the other states that we typically see within the Antebellum South, and it kind of acted maybe as a little bit of a buffer compared to the typical kind of research that gets brought up about the South and the different regions.
To dig into this a little, because we had Simon here and we interviewed him. In England, so bluegrass, how do you kind of like, is that something that people are like, oh, why are you into this? Or is that something that, it might be listened to an extent that we don't appreciate as much as Americans, and then it does sort of filter overseas and has an impact? Or is that just something that was, sort of unique to what you enjoyed?
Yeah, I think definitely very, very unique, but I'm very much known at home as having very strange music taste, so it's definitely kind of a me thing, but my dad as well is very into music and stuff, so I think sort of that's where that comes from. But I don't know that there's a lot of English people that listen to bluegrass, but there's definitely a lot of English people who like folk music and that kind of thing. And I think there's generally this sort of fascination with America generally, but also I think the South, because we just, I don't know, apart from what we learn in school and things, we don't really know a lot about it, so it's kind of mystified and things, I would say, for the general British public.
So to ask a really broad question, you don't have to like give a super specific answer for this one in particular, but do you guys have a conception of like, okay, here's Kentucky and here's the different states and this is sort of what sets Kentucky apart? If you're asking me about England and you explain sort of where you're at, I might not know specifically, you know, what sets this region off from that region, or what sets, you know, a specific place apart from another place. But as an outsider studying a specific region, if you told someone back home, okay, I study Kentucky, are there sort of broad stereotypes about it? Or is that just sort of, okay, it's in the United States and this is just, you know, part of the South, and that's how people see it?
I think maybe some people would see it as part of the South, but I think, and sort of that's it, but I think there's quite a big understanding of sort of bourbon and horses, I would say, the stereotypes that we have. But I'd say that's a very positive thing in terms of our conception of it and stuff. And I don't know, I think most people would see it as quite an exciting place to visit. And be very interested in that sort of culture and the distillery culture and that kind of thing.
I always tell fellows this, but I think one of the nice things about coming to Kentucky, and you'll get some of this, I know you're going to South Carolina, is it's very laid back in the sense of, if you do a research fellowship in Boston or you're up in different regions, it has its own beauty, but at the same time, you can really appreciate, I don't know, horse country, and it just feels like it's almost more relaxing to be in Frankfurt and to do a bit of do research here where it's not that intensity.
I'd agree. I mean, I think the main street here is absolutely beautiful, and it's very classic to me, sort of what I imagine of America. And then driving from Lexington out of the city, where you have all the ranches and everything, and the white picket fences and stuff, it's absolutely beautiful and very, very different to back home. So it's been a really, really nice experience, and I just think everyone is so friendly here, which is really good.
We always try to be friendly for the fellows, but it is generally like, you know, it's a good spot, and
definitely.
It is nice to have people come in and study it. I know we talked about this briefly, but can you tell us a little bit more about your dissertation and sort of what you're specifically looking at as a fellow here? I know you gave a presentation this morning. You probably talked out on this, but can you just give us in sort of a nutshell, what are you working on, and what is the topic that you're researching while you're at the KHS?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my general dissertation is looking at physicality and physical disability amongst enslaved men within the antebellum period of the South. And perhaps I'm going to extend that to look at slaveholding men within the South as well, to sort of consider how disability might have configured their ideas of masculinity. But while I'm at the KHS, I'd say the main focus of the things that I'm looking at has been sort of legal records, and also records related to sale or indentures, as well as medical records and that kind of thing, where there might be physical descriptions of enslaved men. And also there's been a plantation diary that I've been looking through, although I feel like based on the talk that I'm definitely going to have another look at that maybe later today at some point, to see if there was something that I missed, but so far it's been really helpful, particularly that diary, I think, for getting into the nitty-gritty.
It's a tough topic. One of the things we talk about with a lot of fellows who are here is the difficulty of finding sources. Is that still a challenge with your topic, to sort of find places that actually have archival records, or getting at those sources? Is that...
I would say so. I think because of what I'm studying, it's sort of a double-edged sword, where maybe this concept of masculinity, like, you're not going to see that in the finding aid probably most of the time, so I'm just looking for things generally to do with men which might cover that, and then physical disability in itself as well isn't often referenced in finding aids, particularly within I would say, slavery sources, because it's quite a new topic within the area of slavery. So when a lot of the finding aids were done, people might not have thought that that was something, you know, that they had to mention. It's definitely in some, and that has been really helpful, but generally it's a little bit of a kind of a pot shot where we see what we get, I guess.
Yeah, it is a difficult topic to do, but also I'd imagine just the source base is limited.
Yeah.
But then from your talk today, it sounds like you found a lot, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite limited, and that's something that when I go home, maybe I'm going to sort of widen my search a little bit, 'cause I thought going into this is really interesting, and I kind of thought that maybe it would be quite a small, I guess Venn diagram is the term that I've been using in terms of that overlap of physical disability and masculinity. But I have managed to find some good stuff, particularly I would say within different online databases about petitions and things, and also the WPA interviews and stuff, and a lot of kind of emotion-based research in terms of how disability might have influenced both the enslaved community and slaveholders in terms of their emotional responses to it.
And it's tough, too, for listeners who might not realize we have only been researching for the last couple of days at KHS.
Yeah.
So it is difficult when you come in on a Wednesday and we're asking you a few days later, like, what have you found? But that does lead to a question I always ask. Is there one source in particular or one thing that you found here so far that you found really helpful or that you found really interesting or that you didn't expect to find? Has there been any source that's sort of stood out in that sense?
I guess I might say his last name wrong, so forgive me, but J.W. McGaughey diary, which I didn't actually think of requesting before I got here, and then I was just searching again on the database online, and it came up as a possible thing that might be useful. And then reading through that, I've not found a lot of mentions of physical disability, but there's been some interesting things to do with slaveholder and enslaved relations, and how men were sort of featured on the plantation in different roles, and also sort of the use of the men as entertainment for the slaveholders as well, which I think is something that I could maybe use in my dissertation going forward. Yeah.
It's such a heavy topic. One of the challenges of this is sometimes I'll ask, did you find a really interesting source or a fun source? But from your talk today, I gathered that it's difficult stuff you're going through and difficult sort of a topic to do. So with that, to sort of pivot just a little bit, I know you've been here for a short time, but since you've been in Kentucky, has there been anything that you've wanted to see or something that surprised you about Kentucky itself or that you didn't expect, that you found really sort of enjoyable just as someone coming on a research trip from outside of the States?
I visited the Keeneland racetrack over the weekend, and that was absolutely gorgeous. I guess that's probably very well known, so not too unexpected.
It gives you a taste, though. It does really. That's cool.
Yeah, and it was really, really nice. And then I guess just sort of, I don't know, going to bars or just around experiencing how friendly everyone is. And I don't know if it's because of my accent or if everyone is just like that, but everyone has been so nice in terms of giving recommendations or just making me feel really welcome, whether that's people here at the archive or just, generally. It's been, I don't know, a really, really positive experience, I would say.
Now I've got to ask, can people place you in the sense of when you talk and you're about the state, do people guess another state, or do they instantly go, okay, I think I can guess this accent?
Well, when I was doing my master's, which was in Missouri, people always thought I was Australian, which is quite interesting. But here I've not had that, but generally people don't seem to think that I'm from Manchester. I'd say my accent maybe isn't the thickest, but I think maybe if you were from home you might know, but over here, no, it's definitely just general English, I would say, or British, as people say. It's
always interesting to me, kind of that, because even when you travel throughout the US, when I was in Alabama, people would always try to place, like, and it was always, they'd usually guess like Ohio, so sort of, the opposite region, and just sort of go, okay, I can place it's American, but like where? So I think that's the thing that's always interesting. It's like, I always wondered that.
It's interesting for me. I mean, I've fallen in love with the accents here, so it's been really nice. Yeah.
And they can change up really fast. I think that's the thing about Kentucky. It's an interesting state with that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To kind of bring this all to a close and to wrap up, what are you planning to do with your research? So I know for our listeners, we've talked to people from all different stages. So some who are working on like third book and some people who are early in the research. Can you tell people what a dissertation is like and sort of what this process is for you? Can you give our listeners sort of a sense of that?
Yeah, I guess it's having lots of hopes and then seeing them fall away.
Yes,
it's
a good way to explain it.
Yeah, no, it's a lot more positive than that. But I think you definitely, going into it, you maybe have ideas of what it will look like, but then you've just got to really follow the archive and follow what you actually find, and then maybe change your topic a little bit based upon what you find. But generally, so I have to write 80,000 words. I think that's the amount. And yeah, from that, there's going to be 5 chapters, I think, that I'm going to write. And the PhDs in the UK are normally 3 to 4 years, so it's a bit shorter than your typical US PhD.
That's fast, because they gave us, 5 to 6, and people do at different speeds, but that's rapid.
Fast, yeah. I guess we just sort of get dropped into it, so we don't do any master's courses or things. We just start straight on the research. But yeah, the first year is just a lot of reading, I would say, secondary reading, and I'm now in my second year, so this is sort of the crackdown time of starting to write and everything and formulate those chapters a bit more.
Just out of curiosity, do you have like a comprehensive exams? I know in the US we do like comps usually year 2 around.
Yeah, nothing quite like that, but we have at my university it's called the upgrade, but I think at other universities it might be called something different, where you submit a piece of writing and a plan for what you're going to do in the rest of the PhD in your first year, and then that either gets accepted or rejected for whether you can become a proper PhD candidate, and then in your second and third year you'll have to go through a similar process, but you just won't have to submit a piece of writing this time, so it's a bit less stressful after that.
So they call it the upgrade? I love that.
Yeah.
That is so much better.
It sounds very
we just do comprehensives and it's like, oh, you're a PhD candidate. That does not sound half as cool.
But that sounds a lot worse. Whenever I've heard any Americans talk about the comprehensive exams, I'm terrified. So
because they usually do it around year 2. It does vary, and they'll just have different testing fields. So basically, they'll give you might get US South, or it might be first half US or second half, sort of depending on what your specialty is, and then your professors will just give you a list of books.
Oh, wow.
And then questions, and it's, for those who've been through it, it's not fun.
No.
Then you emerge as a PhD candidate, but I still think upgrade would be way cooler.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot more of a spirit-breaking exercise, the comprehensive exams. So.
Yes, you have to go out and find a job, and everything is rough. So the dissertation is a process. I think it's fun to talk to people about it, because you do get a sense. Maybe you can tell a little bit to us about the process of revision. I know in your talk today, you talked about individual chapters. So do you imagine that you have to revise it a lot, or how does the process sort of work once you've wrote? I mean, it is 80,000 words, so we're talking a book pretty much.
Yeah. I think so, especially with my writing style. Like I do just write a lot, and then I would say normally have to cut it down quite a lot. But I think definitely there's probably going to be quite a lot of revision. And I would say for most people that often will happen, where they might take chunks out of a chapter and then see if it could fit in somewhere else if they really like it. But I imagine for me it's going to be an exercise of writing as much as I can, and then sort of kind of mixing it together a little bit like a horrible cocktail, but we'll see.
It's such a hard stage too, because you're just going to the archives getting stuff, and then everyone is asking you questions like, what are you doing? How's it going? And then you'll get this more as time goes, but your family, who will be very concerned but very caring, will be asking, how long is this going to take? And how's the process going?
Yeah, definitely. Like, they're very excited for me, but I think every time I talk about it, what is a PhD again?
Yes.
A little bit.
I think the fun part for us, like on our end, is that we see you all come through as graduate students and at different levels. Later down the road, and we've talked to a couple of folks early in the podcast, when they've got the book done, and you sort of see that final product. It is pretty cool to sort of see that develop and see the project develop. So I guess my life advice there is like, just hang in there, because it does get better.
It'll
and
be okay.
you know, you'll get the project done, and then down the road, you know, you get hopefully one day we have one of your books on our shelf, and we're like, oh, here's a fellow bookshelf, and it's like, oh, you talked to me back in the day, back when this was still just an idea.
I can come back for the book.
Yes, give us a book talk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, Mia.
Oh, thank you very much.
In spite of the large number of works that have investigated the institution of slavery, much remains to be learned. As Mia explained, enslaved people often suffered violence at the hands of their enslavers, and this violence often shaped the rest of their lives. Although it can be difficult to find sources, historians like Mia are working hard to help us better understand the institution of slavery and to delve past existing stereotypes. Thanks to Mia Edwards for sharing her research today. Kentucky Chronicles is funded by the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation. Our show is produced by Gregory Hardison, with support from Dr. Stephanie Lang. Our theme music is used courtesy of Pixabay. To learn more about our publication of the Register of the Kentucky Historical Society, or to learn more about our Research Fellows program, please visit our website, history.ky.gov. That's history.ky.gov. If you have enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and be sure to tell your friends and colleagues.